Okay. Oh, back again?
What did it do?
It did play.
Oh, it didn't? Really?
No, it really didn't.
Take two bloopers. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Hello. It is Friday night. It's 5 p.m. on the Pacific Coast, and this is the Unfiltered Experience with yours truly, Christopher Rausch.
And Scott Goyette.
And Scott Goyette. What's up, Mr. Scott Goyette? How are you doing this fine Friday evening?
Doing good, man. Just I've decided that this is the year where I'm just going to fix my body because I'm gonna meet my insurance deductible. And so I'm literally gonna look at myself as a car and I'm just gonna do a bunch of upgrades. I'm going for Bionic this year. That's my theme starting right now. Bionic Scott in his 50th year. I'm going to fix everything once I reach that deductible. How about you? What do you think? What do you think of that idea? You want to do that too?
Well, considering I got 2 years on you, yeah, you make that deductible and then some. Yeah. I mean, I was telling Barb the other day, I was like, remember when I was like up until about 44, 45, I was invincible. I mean, I could just do anything, go. And all of a sudden my body was like, hey, motherfucker, guess what? All that hard beating in your life. But no, I think it's awesome. I think it's actually a tremendous outlook on it because like you and I have had these conversations before and thinking about our life and thinking about the school of life that right now is the best time for us to really take our health and take our situation seriously because this is the catapult for the next 40, 50 years of our life. And with medical technology and everything, I want to be the best I could be now because of advances maybe in 15, 20 years. Oh, hey, you're in great condition. You're eligible for this, so I can stick around a little bit longer and screw this world up a little bit. That's what I think about it. What's up, Christina Finch? $1 Million Man. Did you ever watch? Did you like the $6 Million Man, or did you like Bionic Woman, or both?
Oh, all of that was cool. Even like Wonder Woman, Super, like any of those shows were fun. Anybody who had like superhuman something or another, I'm like, I'm gonna watch all of it. It was good.
Bionic Scott, I love it. Yeah. What's up, Glenda? Glenda wants to be Bionic too. She's coming in from Georgia. Hope you're doing better. Everything's feeling better for you, Glenda. Thank you for being here. Yeah, man. And speaking of longevity and speaking about health and freedom and everything that I've been talking about today a lot and thinking about freedom. And you think about mindset, Scott, and we talked a lot about it. What is the biggest freedom in your mind that you would want? Like freedom of fear or freedom of judgment or freedom of hate? What would be the freedom in your brain that you would want the most of?
Well, I mean, I think that's actually an easy question for me. You can already predict my answer on that one. It's going to be freedom of fear because on the opposite spectrum of fear is love. But I don't want to just have it for me. I want it for everybody because if you are free from fear, then you just fall into what we're meant to be in love. And I think then you can truly dominate the world. Truly dominate the world. You don't know anybody who can love hard and help us dominate the world, do you?
I know a lot of people that can help us dominate the world. And as a matter of fact, that's a great segue, Scott. I love that. You set me up perfectly. It was like that volleyball thing. Set, serve, bam. Yes. And speaking of dominating, we have a brilliant soul with us here tonight on the Unfiltered Experience. And thank you guys all for being here, whether you're live or on the replay. As always, we appreciate you guys engaging with us in the comments and sharing your perspectives and sharing your stories as we flash them up on the screen because you are a part of our family. You guys are the Unfiltered crew. So we love you and massively appreciate you being here, spending your time with us each and every Friday night. We're here. Put it on your calendar every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's what we do. We come here every single week and we bring you guests or we bring you, Scott and myself, that bring you unfiltered conversations designed to move you forward in this episode and after this episode. And with that, Scott, I'm happy to introduce our guest tonight. I had the pleasure of meeting her and had her on the Raw and Unscripted show and immediately just developed a bond because of her straightforwardness, because of her candor and her journey and what she has accomplished, and her mindset really speaks to the fact of what we're talking about today is dominating that inner psyche, dominating that inner critic that constantly holds us back. So I am pleased to welcome to the Unfiltered Experience, Miss Dana Ferrant. Dana Ferrant, good evening with us. Good evening. How are you doing? And thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was looking forward to this. I'm staying up late. I'm East Coast, so this is late for me because I am such an early morning person. So it's only because you are so amazing as a host. I just had to come on your show.
Oh, thank you. So let's see, it's 5 o'clock here. So on the East Coast, what is it? A whole 8 o'clock?
It's 8 o'clock. I know, but usually I'm in bed at 9.
But when do you go to sleep?
I'm usually asleep by 9:15. Yeah.
Quarter after 9. You married?
Yeah.
Come on.
We're both early risers. We're up at 5. It's 5 a.m.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I was
wake up.
for a while.
That's wake us up. So.
Well, nonetheless, we appreciate you being here, Bright-Eyed and Bushy-Tailed here with the Unfiltered Experience, and thank you for bringing your brilliance here. What we're going to be talking about tonight, and we'll just kick it right off. Really, when I was talking to Scott about that mindset and the way we titled the show, and is dominating our inner critic. With your journey and everything that you've been through, what are some key identifiers and why we have that inner critic? Where does that inner critic begin? And maybe tell us a little bit about your story and where that inner critic first showed up, and perhaps some of the ways that you've been able to battle that. And let's just kick it off right there.
Okay, so just a light question to tie.
Yeah, that's it.
I've been experimenting with being fluffy and like this, and I'm like, I want to experiment just going knee deep into fucking deeper. Let's just go right into it.
Okay.
She said she has to get to bed early. We got to get this done quick. We got to get the hard stuff. If you're tapering at the end, this is for you. This is a gift for you.
Yeah. So we might taper. Just.
Start strong. Just like cruise it easier.
Yeah. Okay. So quick highlight reel for those that haven't seen me before. I grew up in a cult, and leaving that at 18, I spent a good 20 years trying to find different ways to basically unfuck my brain from all of that programming that I grew up with. And along the way, some of the most dramatic healing that I found was actually inside of the dungeon. And that was what propelled me to want to become a dominatrix. So I stepped into that world. So there's like these big things in my background that people are like, what? But they all kind of make sense.
Wait. You just talked about a cult and dominating all in like the first sentence. I mean, we go deep. That's what I love about you. Just bring it. Bring it.
Just be in there. Let's get these out of the way, and then we can
Let's go.
But I'd say both of those experiences play a large role in where I'm at now, with really focusing in on mindset and consciousness, and in getting people to get connected with those pieces, and getting out of the monkey mind of their own head and getting beyond that. So we can dive into that more. If you guys have questions, we can dive into my background, but I want to kind of just tap into what you asked about, fear. Where does this fear come from? Where does that mindset of fear and the self, like, what was it? The self-questioning? Was it that?
Mm-hmm.
I think we are naturally born with this desire to want to think and reason and question. The thing is that tends to go a little bit off the rails, in that we then take that to be, there's something wrong with us, and we're looking for things that are wrong with us. And so that is where the monkey mind comes in, as opposed to just sitting in observation and going, oh, that's interesting, which is kind of the Buddhist philosophy. Sure. But that idea of being able to change the narrative, I think a lot of it has to come from, I'm getting noise coming on, has to come from within. We have to change from looking at ourselves and saying, why am I fucked up? Which is always going to bring you up all the stories of what you did wrong. Yep. To, wow, that's interesting. And having an observational point of view. So there's way more than, but let's just start at the surface there and dig in.
What's your answer? Thank you. I want to see what Scott's perspective is on this. I think I could figure it, but I want to hear it from myself.
I actually, again, I subscribe to a lot of what you see in the Buddhist mindset. I don't practice one spirituality, religion, or mindset, but I like to take pieces of all and critically think about each and plug them in where I see fit. And I love exactly what you're saying, because we grew up with the don'ts, and there's no reason. It's not even a bad thing, because we've got our amygdala. There's a point in time where fear was there for a reason, for survival. And now, you're sitting, and I've done it. My 1-year-old kid's running toward the coffee table. Don't do this. Don't do that. Watch for that. And so instead of saying, and we've had this conversation, Chris and I too, saying something on the lines of, there's another place to play. What do you think of that? Or, redirecting. And so in our minds, we're hearing all these don'ts, not good enough. And like you said, when we frame a situation, we don't just observe, we want to grade it, good or bad. Everything has polarity.
Mhm.
And while polarity is a great thing, because if we have fear, we have love. If we have sadness, we have joy. We don't need to dive in the depths of the perceived negative polarity when we can move this way. And observation allows us to not get stuck on that negative inner critic, but have an observational, I don't even know if the word's critic, an observational component to our brain. Does that make sense?
I love that, because I mean, my viewpoint on this is that if we want to shift out of fear, we first of all have to embrace it. We have to stop labeling it as wrong. I think that's where you're going. If we stop labeling it as wrong, then we're not resisting it. And the moment that we stop resisting it is the moment that we make space for it to shift. Or and way I like to look at it is that embracing the full spectrum of your emotions, so that you can experience your fear and go, oh, that's kind of cool, and know that you also have all this love and joy, and it's all of it, as opposed to a singular component of our emotional spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's the real big transcendence for me, is this idea of like, okay, instead of being, the blinder focus, take the blinders off and see everything that's there. And then what do you choose? What do you choose to focus on, as opposed to trying to make something go away? Because I don't think we ever make the fear go away, but by embracing it and loving it, then we have less angst in our lives.
So that's actually the perfect answer. And that's where I'd love to lean in and ask some of the questions. So let's try to collectively, the three of us, describe what this looks like, because let's observe. So let's not criticize. So right now, as an observer, fear is a part of this existence. Love is a part of this existence. Male, female, all the polarities are part of the existence. So at what point did we say, and again, even to Chris's question, which one, when I'm saying move past fear, I'm saying embrace love, fear is always going to be there, because that's part of this video game we live in. And that creates the beauty of love. So when people start to recognize that, I guess my question to you is, how do we help people step out of this monkey mind into that observational state and truly realize that we can't hide these things and say, bad boy, sit in the corner, because fear is going to come running back. And I've been experiencing a lot of that myself lately too, where I see fear coming in, and the quicker I embrace it, I use it as a catapult to bring more love into my life. So how do we get into that observational space? What does that look like for somebody who doesn't see it as possible because their amygdala is firing all the time? How do we get them to recognize, move through, and lead into that space of love?
Yeah. So if I can jump in on this one, one of the first pieces that I like working with people on is to say, or educate them on the fact that fear and excitement are nearly identical. They're so close physiologically that, the majority of the times we are labeling things as fear when it's actually excitement. And you think about that roller coaster ride. And for most of us, we like roller coasters. If you don't like roller coasters, this is just going to be straight fear. But you're going up the roller coaster. You're going up that first hill. And I don't know about you, but I love that. I love that sense of like, right? You're like,
I can't breathe.
like, going up. We start going down. I'm like, and then halfway through, I'm like, and then by the time we're off, I'm like, let's go again.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That piece where it's like our experiences of life, we've been taught that we're afraid. We've been taught to label it as fear. And so just putting in that little question of like, what if it's excitement? So I'm not saying it is, but like, what if? So putting that little seed of doubt, that is the very first step.
Bingo, bingo, bingo. That's exactly where I was thinking about, is the fact that it's all about perspective. That's what Scott and I are always talking about. And that you agree, it's about that shift in perspective. And I was using that same analogy a couple of days ago, and it made somebody go, aha. And I said, listen, I said, there's a couple of people standing in line for a roller coaster. Same thing. I said, person up in front is nearly shitting themselves. Like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's so tall. What if it breaks? And and what if that? And oh my God, what am I doing? And you're making me do this. And this is a shitty experience. And I can't stand being here. And then two people back, you got, oh my God, this is going to be so much fun. Look how high that is. Oh my God, I'm glad they make roller coasters so safe these days. Has there been an accident in like, a billion years? No, there hasn't. Oh my God, I can't wait to do this, man. We're going to take pictures and and we're going to go home and have so much fun telling everybody else. It's like, It's just that perspective shift between being afraid, like you're saying. And I love what you say, Dana, about the label. You know, we're taught to label something. I find myself with my son all the time. Like you said, Scott, I find myself second guessing, like, no, don't do that. No, don't do it. You could get hurt. No, don't do that. And I'm like, oh my God, I say no like 7,000 times to, and I find myself, especially now, I'm like, hey, buddy, great job brushing your teeth. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be over like you brushed your teeth. Big fucking deal. You wiped your ass. Good job. You're getting there. You still left a crumb. You know, I had to tell him that today. It was pretty funny. He's like, what's a crumb? And I said, never mind. I'll teach you later. But, you know, and just thinking about what it is that we label it. I hear parents like, how did you teach your kids when they failed? Like I told them, like, this failure thing is an opportunity. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. If you continue to do it, then we have to have a conversation. But when you fail and you learn and you do something different, that's the perspective shift that takes something that I believe from a victim to a victor by tackling somebody's mindset issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love tackling the failure piece, because I mean, in my world, I love coming from the perspective that there's no right or wrong. It is all experiences. And I really advocate for my clients to celebrate their failures, because if you can stand and to actually physically stand up, shake your booty, because you release a little bit of dopamine. And of course, we are hardwired as humans to go for that dopamine hit. So the more that you make the failure linked to dopamine, the more willing you are to allow yourself to fail. So it's a great little mind hack for getting yourself to lean in and like you say, it's not really a failure, because that's the piece that opens up the door to the thing that you're really meant to go for, or the way that you're really meant to do it. So, but we have to train ourselves that it's okay to fail.
One of the most beautiful things, and if you guys have been in sales in any capacity, I remember the first time I heard this, I thought it was so stupid. And then eventually I realized it was perfect gospel, is if I go to 100 people and 99 of those people say no, each one of those people are 1% of the commission that I'm getting when that 100 person says yes.
Oh, snap.
And we've all heard it if you've been in sales. Because you can actually, you know, put a dollar value or an energetic value or a currency value to it. But the thing is, people who don't want to put in the time, the repetition, the effort to go from being good to being great, that's the differential. It's literally, you've got to see it. So every step has value. Every no has value. But the thing is that no, like you said, is that create a dopamine hit for good or bad? That's just the programming. So on point, sometimes we have to hear these things a few times before that genius sets in, like anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Glenda says, early childhood, like we were saying. Christina says, I don't either. And do what you do, Scott, and keep your open mind and grounded. God, my eyes are bad today. Give them a choice. Absolutely. Pamela's in the house. What's up, Pamela? Says, hi, guys. Christopher's in the house. This is hello, doing an little art healing while listening in. Thank you so much for being here, guys. And as always, you know, feel free to comment and be sure if this is encouraging you and inspiring you, please share this out. We want to share this communication, this conversation with everybody who might be enjoying this type of conversation. I know that just sounded like I went in fucking circles, but I'm a little tired. So in thinking about that mindset shift for you, Dana, in your journeys, in your travels, where was it for you that we were able to make that distinction of what you had been preconditioned to believe to versus what you believe now? Where was that shift? What was that aha moment you went, oh wow, I don't have to be like that anymore. I don't have to do that. I don't have to live in your perception or your expectations or anything else.
Can I ask a question too, to tie into that too, just out of intrigue myself? Can you incorporate some of the things that you had to shift from the cult? Because that's intriguing to me if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's cool people. She's open.
No, that's what it seemed like. So just
I wouldn't mention it if it was like, you know.
That's me too. I'll tell you anything. Like, ask me a question, you get an answer. So
yeah. So a couple of big questions. So the mindset shifts around the cult have been ongoing. That has taken, the majority of it I did in 20 years, but then there's still been like refinements that I've been doing over the last 10 years and really digging in. So for me, the conditioning that I grew up with was as a woman, I had no value. There was no point in getting education because I wouldn't need a job. I was supposed to get married and have kids. That was my role. And so, the whole idea of being smart, being intelligent, having value in society was not really encouraged. And thereby earning money, being allowed to earn money, like these kinds of messages were really imprinted. And then, a lot of the typical religion pieces are around, it's not okay to earn too much money, even though nobody ever puts a label on exactly how much is too much. Is it 35? Is it 37,000? Is it, there's this nebulous. So there's a lot of these things that were imprinted of these strange pieces that you couldn't quite put your finger on. Like so I grew up Jehovah's Witness, and my parents were very strict with it. And in that religion, there's no one singular person that has started the religion, even though there's no one person that you can point to. And so they've set it up so that as if there's this, prophet without there being a prophet. And that creates this nebulous of, you can't point to where it started. So it's as if it's always been there. And that, it really fucks with your mind. And then some of the beliefs and things where they just expect you to blindly believe it. And I'm like, can you just explain it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I'm an intelligent person, like, I was top in my class. Like, this doesn't make sense. So that piece where I had to learn to trust me, come back around to knowing that I know when people are lying. And that's what I got growing up. Like, I could tell when people were lying. It was like, you're lying to me. And yet I couldn't say anything. So I had to really learn how to voice that and to claim that. And I would say, if I was to point to one singular incident, I would say probably my beginning experiences inside of the dungeon. So I started out on the submissive side of things, and I was very blessed to work with a couple of people who were very gifted in the art of energy work, along with the BDSM. And so we were able to reenact abuse that I grew up with, and of course, script a different outcome. And that imprints on a physical level when you actually go through and physically experience it, as opposed to just imagining it. It's a little different. You really have it imprinted. And so coming out of that, it was the first time that I realized that I had been depressed up until that point, because I came out and I'm looking out. I remember looking out over the gray, drizzly skyline of Toronto. And it's, it's like November, it's drizzly, it's like the crappiest time. I'm going, oh, isn't that pretty? That's kind of pretty how the lights are like. And then at the same time, the voice in my head, the other voice that observes, is like, you've never had that thought.
That's beautiful.
Who's ever had that thought, right? And that's where I really realized, it's like, oh my God, I've been depressed all this time. And the depression shifted. So there was a huge opening. Thanks, Glad, that you want the work that I've done. Yeah, it's that's the work that I do with people now, but on an energetic level, or with the psychedelics, to take them through that same journey. Because of course, I found that not everybody wanted to go to the dungeon with me, for some reason.
No,
right?
Right. I mean, geez, oh, the dungeon. I mean, they all look like what was that stupid movie? 50 Shades of Stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Don't. I saw it by mistake. No.
But it's going to give a distorted view of what can really occur. Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey obviously can give a distorted view of everything you're talking about.
It's there were some things that were quite accurate. What I loved is that they had an actual pro dom work with them on the consultation of the room. So I wanted to see it for that. I mean, it's like, if you're a billionaire, what would your dungeon look like? That's pretty spectacular. It was. But I don't love the fact that they continue to make him a broken man, because it doesn't have to be that way. This can be a very healing modality if you're willing to look at your shit. So did I actually get around to answering the original question? I don't.
Yes, but I also want to add to that now, because now it's intriguing. We tapped into the cult part, we're into the BDSM part and dominatrix. So for people who, don't know anything about this, I'd like to ask a question. So a lot of people have done, specific trauma work or heard about it, where you're role playing, much of what you're saying. You're using, BDSM and dominatrix, for that with the dungeon. So let's talk about some of the differences. So. Yeah, let's talk about some of the differences there, like, what they look like. Because, I mean, I'm just thinking of, I'm not sure who here, but I know some people have done some trauma reenactment where they're going through that emotion and releasing it in full, you know, whether it's screaming at a person who's pretend to be your mom just to release it until it's all out, or yelling at your dad, whatever it is, in anger. So what are you doing that's different so you understand, you know, exactly what's happening? Because I'm interested in that too.
Yeah, so the big difference would be, so to get a little more graphic, so if somebody's been through abuse, if you're enacting it with a therapist in a room, you're the one imagining what's happening. But when you work within, you know, the dungeon, you have a lot more liberty, so you can actually be tying somebody up the way that they were restrained. You can reenact in a much more graphic way. The people get naked, and you know, there are things that can actually be you know, physically pushed on that you wouldn't in a normal therapy session. So to actually have penetration during a session where you are releasing trauma, you're touching on where the trauma got imprinted into the body. And that is key, because no matter how much you visualize, there's another layer that when you actually touch the tissues, that there are things that get released at a much deeper level. And I find that for the majority of people, if they just do the head work, they only get to a certain level. And it's not until you really do this deeper work that you really start to release it. And so, you know, there's a couple ways to go about it. There's the work in the dungeon. There's, you know, the physical side of it. And then, like I said, I'm working a lot more with the psychedelics, which also allows you to express and release in a way that, you know, because it'll get your mind out of the way and allows your innate healing abilities to take over.
Do you think that the psychedelics actually, because I'm just visualizing, like, you know, different things that I've experienced, do you think that it can give you that kind of a instantaneous observer space where you can watch yourself reenacting what you're saying, so you're feeling it in the physical form, but you're literally watching yourself heal? Does that make sense?
It's possible. Everybody has a different experience with the psychedelics. So, you know, generally it is, and there's no, you know, real good general way with the psychedelics, because everybody's experience is very, very different based on what have you been through? What are you willing to go through? What are you willing to release? How much are you willing to surrender to the plant medicine? But I would say from my observations is that the initial piece is you are really caught up in the visuals, in the you know, the psychedelic parts of it. And as you start surrendering to what's going on, then you can start to observe as well as experience. But at first, for most people, it's just an intense experience, which is why I suggest that people have a guide in the first few sessions, because you need someone who's going to hold that container, who's going to be able to like be there, you know, massage your body if you need, or, you know, make sure that you can stay connected and breathing and all of those pieces, because it can be a very intense experience, but it doesn't have to be scary, even if it's dark. So psychedelic experiences can be dark, but the dark ones are often healing. But when you have somebody there who can remind you that like you are still safe in this, then you can start shifting into what you're talking about, where you have that observational. But I find most people, it's not until they've had, you know, 6, 10, maybe even 20 sessions before they get to that point.
I guess I'm speaking from my mind.
Or in the dungeon, or both.
The psychedelics.
The psychedelics, 20 sessions?
To get to that place where you are observing as well as experiencing. Like some people get there fast, but usually you have to have gone through some time with the plant medicine so that you know what is the plant medicine, what is you, and to be able to be in two experiences at once. And it's not always helpful to be in the space of like observing yourself. Sometimes you need to be in it. So
what type of psychedelics are we talking about? Because I know you and I talked about that previously. We just barely touched on it. I'm like, oh, let's wait for that and talk about that on the Unfiltered experience. So what type of
next question
are we talking about in this scheme of things? Because very fascinating.
And amounts too. And are you taking them with them? Because I'm a massive fan of setting. Like when people say, would you recommend I do mushrooms or do this or do this? I come back to that. I say, anything that you do, first and foremost, make sure you want to do it. The setting is paramount. It never, like, people are like, should I do this at a concert? My favorite music? Well, I'm like, stop it. Don't ever go into places, and I don't care. Just don't.
Don't go to Disneyland on acid.
And don't go to the woods. Like, the bad trips often happen in the woods.
Because you hear a noise and there's a scary squirrel and he's chasing you. It's something crazy. I know.
Yeah, if you're not set up somewhere that you're safe and you know that you're so, going in, yes, that's important. Set and setting is huge. They've shown over and over again that determines, whether the event becomes therapeutic or whether it turns to, either just a trip.
It just adds on to the psychosis. Like, oh my God, I just did ayahuasca. Now I'm more fucked up. Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah. So the medicine that I'm called to and what I work with is the mushrooms. And then, but I have also personally worked with ayahuasca, and I'm looking into some of the other plant medicines because I'm curious for myself. But I think at this point, currently, what I'm drawn to is to work with the mushrooms. I find there's a lot of different mushrooms. There's a lot, they each have their own unique personality and what they're good for, who they're good for, amounts. So my belief in this is that when you are connected with the mushrooms, so if I'm serving, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in, I'm going to read their energy field. I'm going to talk with the mushrooms, and I'm going to get the information from the mushrooms as to how much of a dose they need. So that's anywhere from 1 to 3 grams is generally. Now, my own journeys I've gone further than that. I had a 5 gram back in December, which was awesome. Epic.
So what describes it? Because I've never really done mushrooms, we'll say. What would I expect
for therapy?
For therapy.
Yeah. So, okay, what to expect? So generally with mushrooms is that, for most people, when they do ceremonies, they'll make it into a tea. So that's the first thing. So you're not eating these disgusting, dried up mushrooms. Try to chew them. So you drink them as a tea. It's a lot easier to absorb in your system. And the first sense is this sense of like, oh, there's this little bit of calm that washes over. And then everybody experiences a little bit differently, but generally there's a sense of something rushing through your veins, and which is the psilocybin. And it could feel like a rush of cold. It can feel like a rush of something taking over, which it is. And it's in that moment when it's so important to, like, if you're going into fear in that moment, that whoever is sitting with you is going to be reminding you to drop in. Because when you surrender to that feeling and you let yourself drop in, now you can start dropping into the energy and you can be in that psychedelic space, observe the colors and the light show. And, mushrooms typically are a little more reliable for a good psychedelic light show for people. And they respond really well to sounds. So music, having, music therapy, sound therapy happening in the room will often stimulate more activity. And people, and I found it, and other people have said that with different types of music, the visuals change, the colors will change. And so it's like you're seeing how the music is playing. And then, as the cross connections of your brain are firing off, you may taste the music or you may smell the music. And, you're experiencing it on multiple levels. And that opens up. So it's kind of like, I would say to people, it's like the snow globe, right? So your brain is a snow globe, and the mushrooms come along and just give it a good shake. And then everything slowly settles, right? And everything slowly settles into a new spot. So any well-worn grooves, and this is why it's so good for people with depression, ADHD, OCD, those kinds of things, the studies that they've been doing, because so many of them is this well-worn groove in the brain that needs to be interrupted. And so we interrupt it, and then we have a chance to change things. Now, you can't just do psychedelics and then boom, I'm going to be good. You still need to back it up with some therapy, with some cognitive behavioral therapy or traditional therapy or coaching or something to lock it in. But that's kind of a quick overview.
So I love what you're saying too, because I think it's such an awesome, psilocybin is my favorite by far of all hallucinogens. And I'm a massive fan of ayahuasca for those who are ready for that journey. It's plant medicine. It's not a drug. And I sense we're on the same page. I don't know that I would personally want to lead an ayahuasca journey at any point yet. It's not my calling, because I would never want to go in with somebody and be there because of the variables are so intense. And I always look at the person who's really good at what they do. You know, we're down in Peru meeting these shamans from Iquitos, and I'm like, I don't know that I'd want to be that person. If they're good at it and I'm looking at their soul and eye to eye and their energy, they seem like they're in a different space, and I'm not even sure if they're in this realm. So I kind of want to stay here and serve. And I think psilocybin allows for that.
It does.
It does. It definitely does. I can come back and be a human, which is nice.
Well, and the ayahuasca, like most of the people who I would respect as a shaman in the ayahuasca, they dedicate their life to it.
Exactly.
So, you know, this is not new. They've been drinking ayahuasca for at least 10 years before they start leading ceremonies. That's a big dedication.
Exactly.
Not what I want to do. Plus everybody's puking and
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Thank you. No, thank you. We actually have a great question here from Pamela. This would be great. Basically, addressing what you were saying earlier. She says, I'm trying to imagine reenacting certain traumatic experience, and I'm not understanding how it is helpful. Can you explain how that is? Sorry, I just got here a little bit late. Great question.
Great question. So it's kind of like hypnotherapy. So when we work with hypnotherapy, you go back and you'll reconnect with the event. And then because you're in that trance state, the therapist is able to imprint, new beliefs in that process. So with reenacting the events physically, you are re-experiencing it. And then coming out the other side, reclaiming your power, being able to physically take back your power, physically like know and throw the person off or whatever it is that you need to do, which is all discussed ahead of time. Okay. So everything is safe, sane, and consensual. Let me like really stress that. This is not light work. Okay. And please only work with somebody who's sane. There's a lot of fucking crazy people out there. So the idea is that like it really does need to be talked about and expressly said, okay, what do I want as an outcome? What do I want instead? And then the person who's leading you through that can, again, like the hypnotherapist, at that time when you're in that deep trance, because a good BDSM scene will put you into a deep, deep trance. And it's a great time to just drop those pieces in, and then it starts locking right into the subconscious mind and creating massive changes.
So I'm guessing that like when Pam was asking that question, because I know that I've heard two schools of thought on this. One school of thought is, I've heard psychiatrists and people who are doing work like this, light work, say you could start a new story today. Going back there is not the right thing to do. And other people say exactly what you're saying is let's go back to that space and heal it. So, obviously you're doing the latter. So why do you choose the latter? And, why do you think the therapeutic effects lie there versus maybe going on a bunch of ayahuasca journeys and just starting my new journey today and everything else is in my past?
Everything is dependent on what is needed by the client. Not everyone needs to reenact. Some do, some don't. It is more of a, like, if nothing else is working,
gotcha,
then it's a way to break through, because in a good BDSM scene, like I said, if you get into that surrender space and you're actually drop into that trance state, you've let go, the barriers come down. And so for a lot of people, they need that extreme of ripping it down. And to be clear, Scott, this is work I used to do.
Gotcha.
I will in extreme cases with somebody, but typically I am not sure what happens.
Sure.
I want to work with the plant medicine or the other energetic tools or visualizations. There's a lot of other things I'll start with first before we start getting into something extreme, because there's just, there's so much that can go wrong. And for a lot of people, it can be really misunderstood.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And and thank you so much. I mean, just first, that was one thing I wanted to make sure was clear was thank you for your candidness. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing this, because we got people here that are registering with that, and they hear you. Glenda says here, she says, I want to go back and heal. I've been doing a long time now, and nothing working. I need to do a lot of work different. We probably maybe a conversation, you want to reach out to Dana and have that private conversation and see what she could possibly do for you. But in that realm of conversation and talking about psychedelics and talking about dropping in and going back to our original conversation about that fear, I personally had an experience thanks to Scott. Thank you very much, Scott. Scott says, hey, we're going to go do some breath work. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of sissy. We're going to go do some yoga stuff. We're going to go, oh, I feel so much better. I'm like, breath work. And I'm like, okay. And we're getting all prepared and like, okay, it's starting. And we're watching this, Zoom thing. And I'm like, we're watching a Zoom thing to do breath work. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And the music is good. And the guy's all upbeat. And then he starts talking about, so if you start feeling this and you start feeling this, I'm like, I'm laying there and I'm like going, the fuck does Scott get me into? Why would I? Oh, we're going to do that. Oh, okay. And I psychologically in my mind had to go, fuck, I hate this shit. I hate feeling all trapped. I hate hyperventilating. I'm just, and I sat there, and what you said is so perfect. And I really want to hone in on that for everybody watching and for myself as well. That moment where you get to, yeah, I can kind of half-ass this and I can get through this and I can kind of get a taste of what it is. You could do that. And in that moment, I thought, that's what I'm going to do. This is weird. Okay. I'll get a feel of it. Then I'll do it in my own house. And then something came over me and I was like, no, Chris, you do that all your life. You're here. It's safe. Let go. And I let go as much as I possibly could. And it was a transformational experience. I mean, I keep talking about it. I told my wife about it. Scott and I are starting a breath class on Sunday. Talk to us about that, if you're familiar with that, and how maybe that might be a safe alternative for somebody who maybe isn't prepared for psychedelics, but through this breath work opportunity can learn to release. Because I can understand how I'd be like, I did acid once and it freaked me the fuck out and it was a horrible experience. So I love what you said about making sure it's a safe experience and a trusting environment, because I've heard that from so many people. So we definitely want to reinforce that big time. Yeah. But talk to us about breath work if you're familiar with it, and maybe that's a modality for people to look into as well.
Yeah, and I'd really challenge this idea to think that one psychedelic experience is easier or lighter than the other. I mean, typically most people find ayahuasca a rough experience. It can be more intense, but as far as holotropic breath work, it can be just as mind fucking as mushrooms, as ayahuasca, as all of the things. The difference with all of them is your mindset going in. Are you willing to surrender? Are you willing to actually let all of it in? I watch people and I go to ayahuasca, and I'd see these people and it's like, and I'm thinking it's their first time there. And they're like, oh no, I've done like 20 of these. And I'm like,
that's what I'm afraid of. I want to do it so bad, but I want to be in a rubber room.
No, but like they still haven't let go of control. And I'm like, after 10 seconds, you should let go of control. I mean, so it doesn't matter what you're doing. Any of the things will create this opening if you are willing. And it's only a matter of finding the person and the modality that speaks to you. That's the thing.
So you nailed that 1,000%. And I want to sit on this point for a second, because this is where whoever's listening to this, whoever's watching that, we say it, all three of us, I'm sure, are saying this all the time, it's mindset. Your willingness to give 100% to whatever the process is, whether it's breath work, whether it's, reenactment, whether it's an hallucinogen, other plant medicine, I don't care what it is. You are so right. Because I've seen the same thing with ayahuasca, where someone's all like, oh, I can't, like they're fighting. They're trying to stay in control and fight, where I'm sitting here on another planet, time traveling. And I'm just like, I hear you, but you're not in my realm anymore, because I'm in. I mean, Chris watched me do the breath work. We didn't watch me because he was doing it next to me. I could have been disruptive because I'm not holding, I'm in it.
He was in it.
I'm in it. I'm definitely in it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do it, I'm in it. And I highly suggest that to everybody. Don't go, we'll see what this is. Go, I'm going to commit to this process, and mark our words, the three of us, you will get a result if you go all in and trust the process you choose.
Yeah. Now, in saying that, this is where I like mushrooms in that you can start out with smaller doses. So with people who are really nervous, I'll start them out with a microdose. And, they get a feel of like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I can trust it. And then we just gradually increase the dose until they get to a light psychedelic experience. Then we can take them for a full on experience, because it's okay. Like some people, it's just, they need that process to get comfortable. And for other people, it's like, Christopher, it's like, you just need to decide that you're going to go all in. You're going to go all in. The same with me. I am like, the hardcore, bring it on. Let's go.
No, really? You?
I know.
Yeah.
I do love extremes. Like, ayahuasca. Yeah.
You and Scott are totally run off a cliff. Go for it.
I have a feeling that we see the cliff. We're like, I'll get in the air before you. And it's not even really a competition with the other person. It's with yourself going, if you can go that fast, I'd go. It's like, there's something, it's just like, do it. Let's get into it. Yeah. But I will say this, one of the things I want to share about Chris that I find beautiful is he's speaking this stuff to you while he's dealing with his own fears. And if, let's just say, for example, there was a microdose of mushrooms that was done, we were together, that he was thinking about, if that was the case, there may have been some fear. But if there was an environment where a good setting was set up, there may have been a person like Chris that said, hey, I'm going to jump into this. And even though the things you were talking about, when you feel the potential psilocybin flushing through the body and you're like, am I okay? Am I okay? Those natural questions in a good setting turn into a good experience. And if that person leans into it and then did breath work the next day, and then they're still talking about that, it might really work out to be a good thing, because you practiced what you preached and got a lot out of it. If those things happened,
I would be so proud of somebody if they did all that stuff. I mean, if they did it all,
that'd be amazing.
My wife doesn't even watch this show, and just as long as I get out of the 14-day period, I can tell her I did drugs and did it in a room full of crowded people.
And I know that Dana's going to say the same thing too. I throw the word drugs out there too, but I think of drugs as more things that are escapist. I would definitely start leaning in and calling it plant medicine. And I say the word drugs too inappropriately, because mushrooms, when used the way we were using them, are purely plant medicine. Because while we're still having fun and enjoying ourselves, there was a therapeutic effect and there was an intention, because we were dealing with some other stuff. My father-in-law had passed. We're all together, and there's things that we were allowing our emotions to flow through that, and there was a healing process there, which we all felt. So as long as the intention and the setting are laid out correctly, there's always a beautiful opportunity within that plant medicine.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I love about the plant medicine is that, you get that set and setting and the intention for be healing and have respect for the plants, then it sets up this amazing thing that can happen. And like I've said before, that the journey may be dark, because there may be dark things that need to come out and be expressed. But it doesn't mean that it is a bad trip, because when you have someone there to guide you through the darkness and to hold your hand through the darkness, then you come out reborn, and it's incredible.
It's so true. It's so true. I want to address Pamela's question here. She says, how does this compare or to how different than some of the work that's being done with cannabis now? Great question, Pam.
Great question. If I may. So cannabis is not so much of a psychedelic. There are people that have come across that are doing ceremonial work with cannabis and in really starting to respect the plant itself, which I think is beautiful. It is one of the plant medicines. It's very healing. There's a lot of research that's been done. But I'd say probably the big difference is the psychedelic component. So it creates a space for you to be, more aware and more introspective. But has a different effect on the brain. Scott, do you want to say more?
No, I agree. I mean, Pamela, what's happening is your right brain and your left brain are firing. So if you go look at somebody who microdose or go Google, you'll see that the brain chemistry, it lights up. So that lighting up, think about the crown chakra, your connection to source. It's literally lighting up the conduit, so it's not clouded. It's literally a clear conduit to source. So same thing when we see the mycelium network with the plant, went from like tree to tree through mushrooms, talking the same things happening to us through source. All that conduit is opened up, and you feel it. And if you perceive that ahead of time, when you're sitting with the mushrooms, you feel it. You're like, I know something, I feel something. Don't worry about what you're feeling. Just feel it. Just be present. And here's the thing. You might not even know what changed in you, because something could have shifted in your unconscious mind, which, being in a cult, we've got identities based on don't. Something might have shifted, and that inner critic got a little lighter, or our understanding got a little better, or we got clearer who we are, or we wiped a little distortion off the lens. Don't even worry about it. Go into it, feel it. If it's fear, if it's joy, whatever, go feel it. And then I know there's so much that can come out of it, sometimes not even explained, but something good happened.
Yeah, and that's where doing some integration sessions afterwards makes a big difference. That you want to stay connected with what was that, to talk it through a little bit, not from the overanalyze, but just allow some of that processing so that it kind of just untangles the jumbled up in your brain.
Like you said, it's like a snow globe.
It is a snow globe, right? Put it in place. And I know for me, like a lot of times it takes me 3 weeks before it all settles in. And then I can say what I got out of the session. I'm like, something's changed, but I can't articulate it right away. I've rarely had a session where I could articulate it right away. And then I just want to clarify, Scott, the studies that I've seen, I have not seen any studies where they've done MRIs with microdosing. All the studies have been on at least a 1 gram. So where people are getting into hallucinogenic, but then, all the crosswire connections are happening in the brain at that level, which is fascinating. I love what's going on with science.
Isn't it? Watching the under MRI and everything, watching I want them to connect to my brain during this show, because I bet you be like fucking Lighting New York. We're winding up to an hour, and man, your brilliance and your knowledge here has been so instrumental in helping people. Pamela says, "Thank you. That makes sense. Does any of this work for nightmares? I've had severe nightmares since I was a young child." Great question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Pamela. You rock.
And that is a great question, because usually nightmares are tied to traumatic experiences that we've had in our childhood or past lives. So not always present day stuff.
Thank you for saying that, because so many people don't say that. And there's a lot of times it doesn't need to be explained. Your nightmare might never be explained, but you can still go heal it.
Yes. So the psychedelics are a great way in there. Some of the work that I do with just the energetic therapy is a great way in. But there's a lot that you can do to heal the nightmares. So. Yeah,
actually, Pamela is an energy healer too.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. But I don't think she dabbles on that side of things, but she's definitely bi-curious, because that's how I started out and figuring out things. Andrew here, he says the hemp industry is growing. It's so good for mental and physical health. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I'm a card carrying member. I'm not afraid to say it. I've been using marijuana for some keep getting a frog in my throat. I've been using cannabis for I was a pot smoker when I was young, and I realized I did it for self medication for my ADD and like just to chill out. I'm just always fucking plugged in. And then I didn't do it anymore, because I was like, it made me slow and made me kind of lethargic and everything. And then my drug was always anything that made me go fast. I'm like, I want to go do that. But then with the chronic pain and everything, it settled in, and I was taking all the painkillers and everything. I was like, okay, let me just really get back into pot, weed. It kind of irritates me when people call it weed now. I'm like, it's medicine. It's like, it's plant-based medicine. That's why I said I have to go to the medicine store, because it's medicine. It helps me. I'm not taking Percocet anymore. I'm doing all that stuff. So yes, I mean, it's massive. I mean, actually, I was joking around, but another plant is kratom. Most people don't know about kratom. I don't know if you even know about it. You know about kratom? Kratom? KRATM. Yeah, it's a tree-based. It actually works on the opioid receptors. It's not addictive, but it helps with pain management. It helps with focus. It helps with clarity. There's white, there's green, there's red. So I started studying that stuff as well. So that's something for your toolkit as well, because I'm all about trying to figure out how I can coexist in society without constantly having to drink or subdue myself. So I'm always looking at the plant-based medicines. I actually did Cambo once too. Cambo with a shot of Senega and some other stuff. We did the eye drops, the poof of the smoke up your nose. Woo! Did that 2 days in a row. I thought, man, I am brave. So I am brave. But Marlene's here. She says, do you do artwork with the material? Ooh.
So one of the things that I do, Marlene, is I have a light psychedelic experience with people that I actually will allow some people to be remote, so a small group, and we do a 1 gram journey, and then after the meditation period, we do intuitive art. So yes, it is a great tool when you're in that open space to just drop in, and it's amazing what comes out in the art. You know, it is a fabulous way to start, you know, processing what it was that shifted for you. So I love that. I love it as a tool.
Awesome. So final question for you before we let you go. And of course, they can get a hold of you at danaferrant.com, correct?
Yes.
www.danaferrant.com, PHARANT for the podcast listeners on this. So given everything that you have shared, and we're going back to the top of the conversation when we talked about fear and we talked about dominating the inner critic and thinking about your portion of your journey that you shared here today and where you're at today and the modalities, what is like the core message you would tell people right now who are sitting in absolute misery? They have been used to a normal life, a quote unquote normal life. Their cheese has been moved drastically. It's never going to be the same. They've been sitting there on shit for a year, not doing anything, hoping, wishing, and praying it's going to change. And they're in a crappy relationship, and they're literally just desperate. I talked to somebody yesterday that was literally in this spot, and I was like, wow, a lot of people are in this space. So what would be your advice based on everything you've been through? I can kind of surmise it in my head, but I would love to hear it from you to everybody who's listening who might be going through this experience themselves.
You know, I personally have a bias. I think reaching out to somebody to start that journey so that you're not doing it alone. Because sometimes when you're in that space of like the world is a shitty ass place to be, it can be hard to pull your own head out of your own ass. So, you know, the meantime would be, well, what if everything that you believe is a lie? That would be the piece to be asking yourself. What if everything that you're currently telling yourself is a lie? And then a quick little technique with that is that if you turn one direction and you spew out all the crap that's in your head, all the negative crap that's in your head, and then turn 180 degrees over the other way, and you defute, like you actually, you know, like you're a lawyer, you know, defense lawyer, and you say all the things that are like, well, why that wouldn't be possible, why it might not be true, what else might be a reality. And that process is as a bit of cognitive behavior training in actually training your brain to start to move in a different track. And the idea is to do 30 seconds on the negative and at least 2 minutes on, you know, the quote unquote positive, but the flip side.
Brilliant. Yes, focus more on the positive than the negative. And again, ladies and gentlemen, please reach out to Dana. She is a wealth of expertise. I will be reaching out to her personally as well. I mean, given everything you've been through, Dana, and your perspective on situations and your openness to share vulnerably what it is that you've been through, what it is that you've gone through, and how it is that you're helping other people, you know, we applaud you big time here on the Unfiltered Experience, and thank you so much. You have an open invitation to come back anytime you have something new going on, or you feel like a need, you want to just riff with us and have a great conversation. We just so valuably appreciate you. Scott, final thoughts for Dana, and because I know you've had a great conversation with her as well tonight.
I love you. I think you're amazing, and I appreciate you came on, and I appreciate that we're getting you to bed on time. We were finishing it up, so we'll be all right. And I think we're ending smoother. We started stronger, so we went according to plan. What I love about what you're doing is it's multimodal, and everything that you answered, you know, even the question about, you know, which of these philosophies do you think makes more sense, like sending somebody back to that space or not? And the answer is, do they need to go there or not? And I'm the same way. Like you even comment about how many, you know, grams of mushrooms are they doing or psilocybin. I'm the same thing. Read the person. It's individual. You don't know. So many people say, here's the process. I would work with a different process with different people based on my intuitive feelings, because I've done some of these hallucinogens, you know, psilocybin, plant medicine. So to the point, I love what you're doing. It sounds wonderful. I'm sure there's a lot of effectiveness. I recommend everybody give you a call if they find value in it, because I certainly do. So.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're thinking about this, Scott, but I just thought about something else that we could potentially add to the program down the road.
100%, of course, doing. Yeah. I've thought of that. Everything that she's saying. I do this without calling it this. So why don't we just call it this? Why don't we just all get together and do some retreats and incorporate different modalities? that people are coming with. I mean, to your point about bringing art, we could bring music, we could bring, physical art, creations. Those are the things that later in the integration process, when you look back, that's kind of a physical thing to say, oh, I remember where my brain was at this point, or I have that feeling, or I just, as you were talking, I was visualizing all the beauty of potential retreats like this, because my wife and I do retreats already that are wellness, yoga-based, personal development. Adding something like this at some point would be great. And I would never do it with ayahuasca, only psilocybin. So we're in the same place. I love it. It's awesome.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Pamela says, wonderful information. I am following and would love to connect. So there you have a new friend.
Absolutely.
Pamela says also, thank you, Pamela. She says, doing the exercise you just shared did wonders for me early in my journey to healing. Great advice. Glenda says, do some retreat in Georgia. She says, thank you. I needed this. So I think she'll be reaching out as well. Marlene says, reminds me of CBT or CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm like CBD, who? I might actually, truth guys, I might have to start wearing these things like when I do the show.
Go back and forth too.
I'm like, there we go.
Like
I know. I can't see without my glasses anymore. I was like,
I'm getting to a point. I just got to admit that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I could still see
part of my wardrobe now.
I just go like that.
This way you can't see that I haven't put eyelash stuff on.
You just put eyelash stuff on before you go to sleep? Come on. Dana Ferrant, ladies and gentlemen, Dana Ferrant in the Unfiltered Experience. Thank you so much. We're going to place you backstage, and we are going to close out the show here for a second, and we'll be right with you in just a minute. But thank you, DanaFerrant.com. Scott Goyette, brother, what a powerful show. I told you that Dana was going to be bringing some goods. What do you think?
Oh, I love her. I think she's fantastic. And I want to see more healers and more people who are trying to do you were talking about mindset shift being one little thing. If you took nothing else out of this today, one of the points she made in the middle of the show was really just to lean in and just do it. And you echoed that too. And I think that's the kind of stuff we need to all do, whether it's with Dana, with you, whoever we're working with, go all in that process. And I think that she echoes that and trusts that. Go all in, trust it. Don't go in halfway, because if you go in halfway with the process, you're going to get halfway results. And I love her. I think she's great.
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing I love about Dana is the fact that she brings the reality of the situation. Like, okay, I've been through these things, and this is what I've had to do to in a sense, be able to make sense of it, right? I mean, we're always trying to make sense of whatever it is that we're going through or we're growing through, and being able to have that open-mindedness to say, and again, I want to go back and end on this, is the fact that whatever it is that we do it, right? We really do it. I was talking to that lady yesterday, and without giving too much information, the relationship is over. It's over. And she even said it was over. And then she said, well, I'm going to wait until he comes back on Monday just to make sure. And I'm like, you already told me it's over. Just recognize it's over now, because if you don't recognize and just like make that solid agreement with yourself, then you're going to put yourself through this other stuff. And I was like, all right, I wish you well, keep holding on to that idea. But for those of you guys watching, thank you so much for being here. And all of you guys here, Glenda, Pamela, thank you so much for being here. Marlene, Sanchez, Andrea, thank you so much for we'd love to talk to you potentially about coming on here and talking about cannabis. So definitely ping us through the Unfiltered Experience. By the way, guys, go to www.theunfilteredexperience.com. That's our Facebook group page. Get in there. You'll get all the new announcements and everything, because Mr. Scott and I also, speaking of jumping in and everything, Scott and I have a group coaching program you may know about. We talk about it periodically. We talk about it. It's called Raise Your Vibration and Just Jump Into It. And we invite you guys to come check it out. Of course, just go either to my website or his website, ChristopherRausch.com, Raise Your Vibration, and go check it out. We're going to be starting. What was our new date, Scott?
June 7th, I believe. It's a Monday. And the reason we decided that, well, Chris was smart enough to do it, is a lot of people want to go away for a Memorial Day weekend. And especially because we've been stuck in COVID, we're going to start at the beginning of May. But then on a Monday, and you're out partying with your family, and suddenly we're going to give you that week. Let's look at it this way. That's your final week to party. And then you're going to say, I'm going to lean in. I'm going to do some good personal development. So there you go.
Absolutely,
True
guys. Check it. Do go check it out. Do go check it out. This will be our third round. And honestly, without being salesy or anything, the feedback we've received from the group participants has been nothing short of life-changing. So we're here to serve. You guys know that we're here every single week, whether it's the Unfiltered Experience, whether it's the Awakening You, whether it's Raw and Unscripted, whatever it is that we're doing. We come here every single week, bringing our heart and soul to make sure that we're moving the planet, moving the earth in a positive direction for who it is and what we do. So we appreciate you guys being here every single week, spending your Friday night with us. We truly love each and every one of you. So if there's ever anything that we can do, please reach out to us. If you're ever having a moment where you just don't know what to do and you feel like you're desperate, please reach out to Scott and myself. We're here to help. You guys are family. That's why we called you our Unfiltered crew. With that, we love you guys. Have an amazing Friday night. Have an amazing weekend. Most importantly, enjoy your moments.